Good morning. It's 9 o'clock, and we're going to start with our final Seed Talk series for 2021. Today, Westland Insurance is presenting an update on VUA and Saskatchewan Crop Insurance. This is a joint presentation hosted by Saskatchewan Seed Growers in partnership with the Manitoba Seed Grower Association and Alberta Seed Growers. Just a couple notes at the beginning. Everyone is on mute during the presentation and the Q&A session. If there's an echo, someone has both phone and computer audio on. So if you press pound and your participant ID number pound on your phone, and your computer audio will be disconnected. If you're having technical difficulties, text Jeff at 403-975-9981 or email him at jeff@colesag.com. This seminar is being recorded and it will be on the website next week sometime. There's two ways to ask a question. One, you can type it into the Q&A, and at the end of the presentation is when we'll get to all the questions. You can type it in anytime you want. We'll get to them at the end of each presentation. And then we'll pass it over to whoever the question is for. Jennifer Seward with Manitoba and Kelly Chambers with Alberta and I are in the background, just making sure that all of these get answered and handled. Or you can raise your hand if you want to ask a question directly. So just press the raise hand button at the bottom of the page and we will unmute you. You just need to remember to unmute yourself, and then we will mute you again once it's done. And for those of you that are on the computer, at the bottom or the top of your page is where the raise hand function is. And we'll lower it once you've spoken. We will be notified when your hand goes up, and then we'll enact the program so that you can speak. And if you're on a phone, you need to type in your pound, your participant number, and pound, and then you'll see the webinar controls at the bottom. You'll see the lower hand at the bottom. Today's agenda, we're going to start with an update on the variety use agreement by Lauren Hadley. And we'll have a presentation from Westland Insurance Group, who is sponsoring today's session. And that'll be followed by a presentation from Saskatchewan Crop Insurance. What are the benefits to you, a seed grower? So we'll start this morning. Lauren, you're first up. So I will stop share and you can start share and start with your presentation.
Thank you for the invitation to the Seed Talk series sponsored by the provincial groups in the West here. And thank you to Westland agencies for sponsoring this and helping provide this information to seed growers. My role in the 20 some minutes I have is to talk about where we are with the variety use agreement, how the design of the system to a degree, and to talk about how it's going and the tools that are available to make sure it works well. The background of variety use agreement is, as we all know, this business of royalty collection has been under discussion for at least 12 years with a large group of people interested. And of course, it touches on everything we do in the seed industry in terms of breeding and regulation and so on. The platform was designed to be a commercial system chosen by the breeders that want to use it. And we've developed this platform based on the standard practices that farmers are used to. So it's a lot about things that people have done before. It's very much an electronic system. It's very much a user-driven system. So it's not up to the administrators to do the work. It's up to making a system that works for the breeder, distributors, the retailers, and the producers to operate. And it's very early stages, but the capabilities are quite broad. We are answering lots of questions on a daily basis, as we've have all through the discussion of royalty collection and value creation, as it's called. Those will continue. So just to give you a very short version of a very long history, this became more possible as of February of 15, when Canada finally brought our PBR legislation up to the standard of 1991. We launched with the investment of the distributors, the pilot program. Even though it was theoretically talked about, this is a real world running start, if you will. And now we've launched the electronic platform. We have also engaged through what is now Seeds Canada, a discussion group. There is a working group of producers and industry players that are going through the issues around royalty collection one at a time. And of course, VUA is only one part of that. VUA is the part where the commercial producer actually indicates his direct support for a variety developer through paying. Lots and lots of questions, and this is a very, very short list of the questions we have. How will it work? What will it cost? Of course, everything in the seed industry has got a cost factor to it. What are we talking about in terms of royalties, and what's the value equation? Do seed growers, seed grower retailers, seed retailers, and farmers really want to do this? If they don't want to do it, what are their options? And real desire to provide feedback as we go through this grooming process of the program. So this is real world. We're no longer theoretical. This is about real world issues. The issues we're dealing with today are things that are happening as people use the system, from a distributor standpoint, from a seed grower standpoint, and from a producer standpoint. Ultimately, the goal, as I said, is direct return. This is a direct return system. This is a system facilitated by the seed industry to put direct returns into plant breeding programs. Really don't care whether they're public or private. This is about getting more investment. And as we've talked about many, many times, particularly in open pollinated crops in Canada and those without patented traits, we are very reliant on government money in order to keep these programs together. Those of us who've been around for a while have heard this discussion many times. Is that a long-term alternative? So this is a way of starting to put beyond the seed royalties that are returned through certified seed, beyond the grants that are provided by the producer groups, additional money in the hands of seed developers, public and private, at a time in which the opportunities are large because of new technology, but they're costly. Farmers vote with their pocketbook as to which varieties they use and how they like them. We know that as Canadians, we've always relied on having the best genetics, and frankly, some of the people to take our genetics show that worldwide we're recognized. So this encourages everyone in the system to get involved and increase that flow back to breeder, distributor, public or private, to continue that race for the best. Those that are involved in this at the distributor level have made these commitments. We will see value for producers and seed growers. We'll be transparent on how the system works, and at the very upper end, what is the maximum that people will be charged. And we expect there to be a large group of varieties here to allow farmers to choose, but it is a producer and seed grower choice. If this doesn't work for you, there will be other varieties available. How does it work? Well, this is very much trying to pattern itself after what the normal course of business is for a producer and a seed grower. The crop producer chooses the variety he wants. He buys certified seed. At the time of certified seed sale, he signs a variety use agreement for that specific variety. He plants that certified seed. He looks at it on his farm and his conditions, and he decides whether he's going to divert some of the grainy harvests for seed use in the next years. If he chooses to use some of his harvested grain as seed, then he's going to declare how much he used. And that could be declared in, depending on the distributor, it can be declared in different ways. The system is flexible to allow it to be declared either in acres or in seed used. Once that declaration is received by the system from the producer, then an invoice will be created for the variety use fee that was announced when he signed the contract, or something less than what was announced. It will never be more than the original posting on the website. How does it work? Well, it is a two-stage system at the beginning, and after that, it's a one-stage system. So at the beginning, everyone involved has to agree to use the platform in the designed way, and it's known as a platform use agreement. And this gives us the legal basis to do the limited information sharing required to run the system. Then for specific varieties, there will be a specific agreement for each variety that'll have to be agreed to. That's for the retailer. They'll have to agree. They'll have to be invited by the distributor to sell a variety and agree to the terms of it, and then the producer. But remember, this is a one contact point. So if you're a retailer and you retail for 4 different companies, each of those 4 companies, once you've signed the platform agreement, each one of those 4 companies will invite you in for the varieties that you're selling. You will do the same thing with your producers. One-time agreement to use the platform, and then an agreement for every variety that you're selling to that producer once. You will have to declare the sales you've made and ensure that everybody you sell to has signed the variety use agreement. After that, the role of the seed grower is at an end, or seed grower retailer. From then on, the platform will be contacting the producer directly, and we will be asking them for everything they have in the system, confirm what you've used of each variety, or did you dispose of it? And then there will be a single point of invoicing to the producer. Also, as part of this system, there will be audits that be triggered on a, what's an appropriate word here? A need basis. But if a producer is audited, it will be one auditor, all varieties under the VUA system. So the key steps for a seed grower: you sign up to use the platform. Your distributor, once he sees that, will send you an invitation to the varieties that they have got for you this year, and they will update that on a yearly basis. You invite your customers to use the platform. Once they've signed up, then you will invite them to sign an agreement for the variety they wish, or the varieties. And these are separate steps, but remember, the sign up for the platform usage is once for everyone and never has to be repeated in future years. You have to confirm that your sales made, and then we'll have to reconcile to make sure that you've actually got a contract covering all certified seed sales. And we'll do this as electronically as possible. No electronic system or digital system is perfect, but we'll certainly work towards making it as user-friendly as possible. There is a multitude of ways to get training. First of all, everyone in the system will receive an invitation, which will have the address of the website, and it will have your ID, and it will have your initial password, which will go in and change to something you can remember, or you've written down somewhere because you can't remember. There are video instructions built by the platform developer, AgriFlow, that are available for each user and for each function you're expected to perform under the system. Those are available. We also have those instructions in written form that are available. Myself and a couple others are spending our time answering questions. Those questions that would have to do with how the platform works mechanically, if you will, or digitally, and why things are done a certain way inside the digital program will be referred directly to CRM, the makers of AgriFlow, who are our supplier here. Those that are to deal with the policy of how the operation is done will come to me, and sometimes they come to both of us. So we are available by email, which is on the site and will be part of your invitation. There's also phone numbers for both of us. As we launch what is a pilot, remember there is ongoing grooming of the system. So if something doesn't look like it works for you, if it's not intuitive, we look at those things and figure out, and we have made changes in the past 45 days. The platform has been live to groom the system to work for users. This is not about the administrators and going and making entries for you. This is about us making sure you're able to work the system and you have the knowledge to know how to do what you need to do. So that's where it's at. And the final thing, I'm pretty well known in the industry, rightly or wrongly. I take calls on this 7 days a week right now because it's a busy time, and I'm busy when seed growers are busy. So I think it's time, if you want to call me and talk about it, that's fine. Happy to take those calls. This is the varieties that were set in for this year. These are the only varieties that are available through the VUA system. It's quite a broad range. Just because this question has come up several times to talk about when I say soybean, what does that mean? This is a growing approach in soybeans for Western Canada. It is a Roundup ready soybean where SCIC and the developer have agreed that farmers in this particular variety are going to be under contract and permitted to save seed if they wish. But that comes with a price. So you can save your soybean seed of this variety and this variety only at this time, but you're committing that if you save seed and use it, you're going to pay the fee that is determined by SCIC and the distributor. So this is pretty good. The other thing that's unexpected, but for this year, there is also 2 varieties in Eastern Canada. I think the distributor of those varieties, SCIC, will determine when they're available for sale in Western Canada, but they're available right now in Eastern Canada. This is a brand new concept for Eastern Canada of using these 2 varieties of barley in that way. So it's pretty good. I mean, when you look at what we've attracted here, just as a comment, we have one of, if not the newest wheat breeder in Canada, Limegren, with 2 varieties. We have 2 new approaches on soybeans and barley. We also have a small, well-known distributor with new approaches in both forage peas and faba beans. And these new approaches help match the marketplace, if you will, for what growers like to do in those particular crops. Our VUA working group, which is being facilitated under Seeds Canada, formerly CSTA division of Seeds Canada. We developed with the producer groups 12 priorities, and we're having monthly conference calls, which run an hour and a half because that's the limit to most people on Zoom, where we take each of those priorities and find where we have agreement. What is reassuring is all the producer groups are involved. All the producer groups that fund plant breeding are involved. The alignment between the seed industry and the producer groups who are presently investing in plant breeding is very, very high. Not complete, but it's extremely high on the principles of fairness, on the principles of transparency and choice. They're very high. So it's been good. So we will work on those. We expect it will take us, we started last fall, we expect it will take us the full year to work through that and come up with a, for lack of a better term, a report that will be distributable, that will actually simply say, here's where we agree and here's where we don't. But as I said, so far, the concerns are very similar. The solutions aren't always the same, but there's lots of discussion to go. One of the 2 that we've heard of is the present system for cancellation of variety registrations has some flaws, and we all recognize that. This is also on the in the associated discussion about seed reg modernization. The system was put in place at a time in which life was a little simpler. And it's a very simple solution, but whether it meets the needs of everybody is certainly a challenge. And that's a much deeper discussion, and we could spend an hour or more talking about it, so we won't here today. The other thing is the future of public breeding, whether the public breeding is funded through the federal government inside their own institution in Canada, or whether it's funded by the provinces and others through universities. And of course, the progressive producer groups have stepped into what looked like a vacuum and have been putting in place grants, I guess is the best way, grant investments into public breeding programs. And we need to recognize just how important that was when they did it. So the key message is this has been going on for a very long time. This is not like anything else you will see. The VUA system and the platform is something that doesn't exist very many other places in the world, if at all. Certainly the digital enablement and the bias towards using digital is a Canadian only solution at this time. It will work. The platform use agreement will work for different types of contracts, but we've started with the variety use agreement, and it supports anybody that wants to be involved, public or private. And again, it's those three core values of the distributors that are developing the system and paying for its development. Is it has to show value, or the variety won't actually get any uptake. It has to be transparent. Everybody has to know what their commitments are, and it has to have choice. So I got a couple minutes left for questions. I don't know how you want to do that, Lori, whether you want me to just read them off the chat or whether you want to read them to me. Your call.
Thanks so much, Lauren. I wanted to step back and apologize. Familiarity kind of led to this, but I forgot to introduce that you are the Director for Intellectual Property Protection with Seeds Canada. So my apologies on that, first of all.
I thought you just wanted an old farmer from Landis talking.
Oh, well. There was one question that I apologize and I took liberties, but maybe you have it in your presentation, and I kind of cut and pasted from your presentation. There was a question about, do we have a list of the varieties included in the VUA? And
so they're in, yeah. They're also posted on the value creation website. So we have a value creation website, and they're posted there as well. And that is the official posting. Nothing will go on to contracting unless it's on that website. And I apologize, I don't remember the address, but we'll send it to you.
Mitchell has put it into the Q&A.
Thanks, Mitch.
All right, so Kelly and Jennifer and I are going to take turns reading out the questions, and then Lauren, if you would respond, that would be great. That's how the system will work.
All right, well, Kelly here, because Jen has been running to deal with calving this morning, so I'm not sure she's there. Lauren, I've got a question from Rick Rutherford. Do you think royalties will be lower in this system?
Good question, Rick. And it's not part of my role to, I'll use the term speculate on royalty rates. I think what this will result is in transparency of what royalties are, because I think in my experience, one of the things is some producers don't realize that certified seed does include a royalty that goes back to the breeder. So there's some additional transparency. I think that this is a very reactive system, and that because the information is available directly, distributors will adjust their royalties to the value of the variety as seen by the producer. So we expect them to put the maximum they're ever going to charge in the system, but I expect those royalty rates may be adjusted downwards in different ways. But it will lead to the transparency, because again, many commercial producers don't understand the system of funding plant breeding to understand how much is going back to being into the public institutions and private institutions for breeding.
Okay, thank you. And this is Jennifer from Manitoba. I'm back for now. So there's a couple questions in the Q&A from Harry Comer, and I'm very sorry if I've just destroyed your name. I think you're asking here, and I'm sorry to put words in your mouth, but are all crop types included, and who determines that? Or I think that's what you mean by that question. Lauren, can you
Thanks. Thanks for your question. So really, the system can accommodate any crop type, but being in the system for the VUA system, it has to be a benefit to it. So you will see it go into those crop types where there's a high use of farmer saved seed, and asking the farmer to pay a small fee will increase the amount of money going back to the breeder. That's its highest and best use of the system. So any field crop can go in here. We do have some annual forage crops particularly in the pea market going in here, but any crop that's an annual crop can go in here at this time. That's where we are. The decision is made by the breeder and distributor. So the breeder distributors in their discussions of marketing decide whether it's to go in. And if they decide it's to go in, then they have to live up to a set of rules that we've put in place, or a set of requirements. The first one is the transparency of pricing in advance of pricing of the farm safe seed royalty in advance of sale certified. Maximum pricing, whatever the maximum price will be. Doesn't have to stay there for the long run, but it can't be any higher ever. And they have to be prepared to use the system and support it in training their retailers and in supporting us in doing single point invoicing and in supporting us in single point auditing if required.
Thanks, Lauren. This is Kelly from Alberta. Harikmar has asked another question. How is the CFIA, or the, I'm assuming, Variety Registration Office, involved in setup or regulation?
They're not. This is a private contracting system based on two things. It's based on commercial law, and it's based on a PBR grant. So once you have a PBR grant of rights, that's the only impact from government. In terms of oversight, these are commercial contracts. So at present, there is no oversight by anyone on how the contract is enacted or how pricing is determined or any of that. This is a commercial system. This is an offer made at the time of purchase, and it's up to the producer to commit to that or use something else. But there is no oversight as such on the system, other than a PBR grant of rights is required to get into the system at this time.
Okay, great. Lauren, Bob Maston is asking, is this only available for varieties with plant breeders' rights?
At the present time, it is, Bob. We've stuck with that at this point. The platform theory could be extended, but there's no interest in that today. The variety use agreement contract, which is the first contract used on this platform, we are requiring PBR 91 for simplicity's sake at this time.
All right. From Lyndon, we have a question, or maybe a comment. Choice was one of your three main components. Are you able to guarantee that there will be non-VUA varieties available every growing season into the future? Will there be a self-imposed limit, i.e. 1 or 2 VUA varieties at each round of new variety releases, for example?
Good question, comes up all the time. So here's the simplest answer. In the Canadian system, we are not in a position as the people running the platform to make any of those promises ethically or legally. It is up to the distributors. Just like we can't choose what the contracting around other things are, we simply can't force people to use the system or not use the system. Whether or not varieties are available will depend on their value to the producer and whether or not the value that can be received through different methods covers the cost of investment. One part that I will say, just as another one as a question, is this system only work. The VUA system requires this to be put in place at the introduction of the variety. So you can't put it in on a variety that's already in the marketplace. It can only go in at the first launch of the variety.
Thanks, Lauren. We now have a question from Janelle.
Hi, Lauren, that's
Okay.
quite interesting. I just have a question. I guess you mentioned a little bit about commercial growers not really understanding all the royalties and where that value is at. I'm just kind of curious what the feedback is or what you think producers, how they'll react to this, and if it will encourage or discourage them to use these varieties.
Well, you've got to the, Janelle, thanks for the question. You've really hit the nail on the head there. So here's the experience we have to date. Many of us talk to commercial producers on an ongoing basis. Those that recognize that in the present system, they like to see the performance of a variety on their own yard, on their own farm before they commit to using it, seem to be either supportive of this because they get to drive it, or they're asking a question about what happened to the other investment they've made through their producer groups. So that's the question, is whether producers will support it. What we've seen in other contracting systems, if they see value in what they're doing and what they're being asked to do, generally they support things. And I guess the best example we have that's similar, or the best examples are, the first traits in canola and soybeans, the system that we put in place for midge tolerant wheat that does restrict the use of farm safe seed to the first generation. The uptake has been pretty good. So I think it's to the value, and it's to the value the producer sees on his farm. If he sees value, if it's a variety they want, I believe they will sign up. And our experience in CPTA, which is now part of Seeds Canada, is 90% of producers, if you respectfully describe the issues to them, they're willing to live up to things as long as they knew about it in advance. So we're telling them everything we can in advance. We're leaving the decision as to what works on their farm up to them. And if they choose a variety that meets their needs and they choose to use it, we expect we're not going to have issues with them paying, to be honest.
Okay, loads of questions this morning for you, Lauren. They just keep flying in, so get comfortable. Mahid is asking, how is a variety chosen to be on the list? Can you just clarify that quickly for us?
So the variety to be chosen on the list has a couple of requirements. The first requirement is it's up to the breeder to distributor to agree that it goes in. The second requirement is it must go in at first sale of certified seed. The first commercial sale of certified seed, it has to go in then. The third thing is they have to declare the maximum variety use fee when it goes into the system. The farmer signing the contract when they buy their first certified, they have to know what the maximum rate will be if they choose to use their own production in the following years. So those are the three requirements on a variety basis.
Thanks, Lauren. we've got a question from Tom Workington. How, when will you report on results of the current pilot program?
I would say that, thanks for the question, Tom. We're working through this and it's, it's being groomed as we go. I would expect the next kind of report on how things are going will come out in the fall, because then we'll know we'll have 2 years of retail under a contract system, and we'll have our first year of collection, because we do actually have collections on the varieties that were sold into the system last year. And we'll have a better idea of the points that have to be clarified. So I would say fall 2021 is probably when the next report will be out. That will be a general report on how it's working.
Great. I think Mitchell had a follow-up to that, and I think you probably covered it, Lauren. But Mitchell, if you need any more clarity on that question about next steps, just go ahead and pop it in the Q&A. Tom Greaves from Manitoba asks, what does the process look like moving forward in regards to improvement of the platform to allow for it to become more streamlined for growers and retailers?
Well, Tom, thanks for the question. We're doing this as quickly as we can. I think there was needs to be more clarity about the fact that the entry point takes 2 steps at the very beginning. But once that's been completed, the next steps in the following years don't require 2 steps. They're a single step system. There will always be a step in which the distributor has to assign or select the retailers and get agreement the retailer is going to do what's required. And there's always going to be a step where the producer has to be offered a variety and agree to do it. Additional varieties. Some of the concern right now is the platform has specific things you have to agree to that are separate and apart from the variety agreement. And that's why they're 2 separate contracts. So we'll continue to group it. This is meant to be a user-friendly system and as intuitive as possible. And we'll continue to gather feedback as it comes in. Unfortunately, this thing called COVID hit us, and we were unable to actually get in a room and with a group of smart people and do dry runs in person. So we're using a less than optimal system to develop it, or less than optimal process to develop this, just because of the need for social distancing.
All right, thanks, Lauren. And we're getting some questions that have nuances. So again, it's trying to get all of the details out for your answers. We've got a question from Mike Shuchuk. So if it's 100% market driven, can the distributor choose to release a variety into the VUA system or into the traditional system, depending on where they believe it would gain best market acceptance?
Yes, they can choose to do one or the other. They can't do both. They can either use the traditional system fully or they can use the VUA system fully, but they can't do both. So if they look at a variety and say this variety is, it's one that's going to stick around forever and farmers are going to want to use their own seed, which is very traditional, they can use the VUA system because that's going to bring the most return to the breeder. If they think a variety is going to be in the market for a limited number of years and there's not going to be a lot of people want to use it in the long run, they may choose to use a different system. It's up to the distributor to make that appraisal. We're not even going to help them with that appraisal. That's up to them. All we say is one or the other, not both on the same variety.
So Lauren, this is Jennifer in Manitoba again. Can they change their minds, do one or the other, and then change partway through?
The only thing they can do is remove it. They can't come in after they've made sales. They can change their minds and say it's not working. We're going to take it out of the system.
Okay, but you can't go back in if they didn't go in initially.
Got to go in initially. They can go out. That's a commercial decision. We would use the platform to provide notice to producers. but they have to treat every producer who buys the variety identically. So they can't say the producers that bought early still have to pay the farm saved seed royalty, the VUA fee, and these new producers don't. Everybody has to be treated the same. So if you decide to take it out, the contracts that were already paid will be adjusted to no payment.
Ah, okay, interesting. Thank you. Mahid is asking another question here. What are the rules on deregistration that you plan to put in place? I think maybe you can clarify that a bit for us, Lauren.
Well, in terms of variety registration, that's a separate process, not up to me. The policy of Seeds Canada is in development. In general, we believe that the rules have to be transparent, fair, and have to respect the interests of the value chain. So that's basically our position at this time. This is something that is not fully up to just the seed distributor, the seed retailer, or the producer groups. It has to be an agreement amongst everyone that they make sense. And the final thing is they have to be very understandable. Part of the challenge with the present variety cancellation system is it's confused with other systems. And we need to be clear what it means, because essentially variety registration under the VRO, the variety agreement, our variety registration office, is the qualification for sale in Canada, period. And sometimes it's confused with some other processes.
All right, we've got a couple more questions yet, Lauren. From Ray Craswell, if a farmer grew a crop and didn't declare any seed use, who enforces the royalty payment?
Well, there's this guy that the industry hired that performs audits. And I know him pretty well, and I will be going out and having conversations. And if they signed the contract and they're not paying, then they will be asked to pay, and it'll be done through the civil court system, just like plant breeders' rights enforcement is done now. And understand is under PBR 91, the way the law works is if you're being asked to sign a contract at acquisition and you avoid signing that contract and still acquire the variety, that is a violation of law. So everyone that has the variety is compelled to sign the contract. If you don't, we'll find it through audits or activity, and there'll be a civil court action to force the farmer to pay. And it won't be us forcing the farmer, it'll be a judge. So all the civil court things that are required about rules of evidence and clarity and all that. We have a lot of experience in this. As CPTA, now the division of Seeds Canada, and we know how to make these things operate in the civil system. We use the appropriate law that's involved, and simply put, the expectation is the courts will enforce a contract, and the courts will enforce the use of a protected variety, even in the absence of a contract.
Okay, I see one more question in the queue, and there's still time for other questions, so don't hesitate to ask. Hari Kumar is asking is a follow-up to my question, Lauren, about taking varieties out of the VUA. How would you enforce that all producers will be treated equally if the company takes a variety out of the VUA system?
So if a variety is out of the system, we have access to know all of the contracts that are in place. So simply put, it would be a discussion between the distributor and the platform would simply say, these are now, for lack of a better term, zero rated contracts. We have no control on what they do outside the system, but our requirement will be that they stay. If they're in, they're in. If they're out for everybody. And I think it would be questionable whether any company would try to do anything different. It's just not something that you get away with in this market. It's just not, I don't think it's going to happen. How's that?
Thanks, Lauren. If anybody has any further questions, you can keep typing them in the Q&A and we'll make sure that they get answered. For now, we're going to continue on with our agenda. Thanks so much, Lauren, for the presentation. And thanks to the participants for asking the questions. Now I'm going to introduce Jason Farrell. He's the general manager with Westland Insurance Group, and we're very pleased that they're supporting this webinar session today. Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Lori, and good morning to everyone. I'm Jason Farrell. I'm the manager at here at the Westland branch in Yorkton. As Farrell Agencies, we were and continue to be very involved with the seed business, and specifically with the errors and omissions insurance. We worked with all of the respective organizations represented here today, that being Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta Seed Grower Associations, to come up with a seed E&O wording that was robust enough to protect their members. So we've been doing this for about 30 years now. We've got a I might be a bit biased, but I would say our E&O is state of the art, and it's always evolving, keeping current with the changing needs of the growers. It's kind of a good segue further to what Lauren had stated regarding the PBR, because as I'm sure most or all of you are aware of the most recent lawsuit regarding PBR that involves SCIC and Alliance, and how this applies to seed E&O insurance is that if any of you that have a processing facility are involved in custom cleaning, you need now to have some sort of a waiver signed, clearly stating that the adherence to PBR is the sole responsibility of the seed owner, that being the individual that's bringing you the seed to custom clean for them. Because if you want to read through the metrics of the settlement, the individual that owned the processing facility, he was partially responsible for the $737,597 cash settlement. So for any of you out there, if you are doing custom cleaning, I'd strongly encourage you to consult with your legal counsel and get a waiver drafted. If you're a client of ours, we do have a template that we could forward to you that could help you with that. So that's regarding a recent development in seed E&O insurance. As far as how do you access, or how do you is my screen shared now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so for those interested in finding out more about our seed E&O program, all you got to do is go on your search engine and just type in Seed Industry Plus. Seed Industry Plus is a registered trademark, formerly of Farrell Agencies and now of Westland. And this is the E&O program that is 30 years old with a lot of history, and this is the application that I'm referring to. So all you do is click on that link. It takes you directly to the page, and it's pretty simple to fill out. You fill it out online, hit send. It ends up in our office, and within an hour or so, you'll get an E&O quote, and that'll lead to further discussion on what you filled in, if that is what you need, or if there's any further clarification. Our limits range from $100,000 to $2 million. you can, there's a contact number here at the bottom, which comes again directly to our office. That's not a general number that ends up somewhere in the Westland system. That is our number. So whoever you get, it'll be myself or one of our seed experts to discuss your questions or concerns or walk you through the application. So it is, yeah, with great pleasure to tell everyone and remind everyone that what was Feral Agencies is now Westland, and it continues, and it is a very important part of what we're doing for the seed business and the seed growers and the protection that ultimately you all need. So that's my presentation, and I will open up the floor to any questions.
Thanks again, Jason, so much for your continued support of the Saskatchewan seed growers and our activities. We all know that we would really love to be in the hospitality room having these conversations, but we certainly appreciate you continuing to, like I said, support us and our activities. Thanks again for sponsoring.
It's a pleasure. The support we give is reflected in the respective memberships supporting us. So that's business. So is there any questions, Lori or Jennifer?
We don't see any in the Q&A right now, but there might be some come in later, and then
and hey, they can get pretty technical, and then they would be specific to the individual grower. So again, if there's any questions, I encourage any of you to type in Seed Industry Plus on your Google search engine, and it'll take you right to the page that you can either fill out or the number that you need to call. So with that, I wish you all well.
I have a comment and a question for Jason. Jason, in the past, the industry provided on our PBR Facts website a set of recommendations for seed processors, which included essentially a work order for any custom cleaning that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wondered if you'd actually ever reviewed that and see whether those are strong enough to provide the waiver that you're talking about. If not, I can send you that. We don't actually create the work orders for the seed industry, but we do have a set of recommendations. And so it's about, do you know if the variety is protected? Do you know it's basically an informational thing, similar to what you sign when you agree to have somebody repair a tire on your tractor or so on. So I'll try and make sure you get a hold of that. But I think we've started down the road that you agree, that you're concerned about it. I'm just not sure that we're strong enough yet in terms of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's a fair comment. But you know, I guess at the end of the day, if there was a similar situation that just got settled, the question would be asked to the processor. Well, did you know that you were processing a PBR protected variety? And if the answer is no, I didn't ask the question. He brought it to me and I cleaned it. And well, then that's the gap. And
that's actually the purpose of the work order, to force the question.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I'll send it to you. I'd
appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
Yeah, I'll wish you all well. Have a good meeting, and have a safe and healthy seeding season and a successful 2021 crop year, everyone.
Thanks, Jason. Now we're going to move to crop insurance, and I'm going to introduce Janelle Ashoey. She's the research analyst with the R&D division, and Ray Groenveld with he's the agri-stability manager for policy, program development, and readiness. And big long the terms, but I'll let you introduce yourselves and tell us a bit more about the program that you have for seed growers.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lori. I'll just go ahead and get my screen shared here while I'm speaking and introducing myself. So yeah, I work with the Research and Development Division here in Melville. So we work with programs and then, you know, any additions or changes that we need to do with that. So just a little bit of background. I moved to Saskatchewan in 2009. I'm originally from Montana, and I went to university at Washington State University. At the time, it was keyed the pea and lentil capital of the world. And at the time, I didn't really care about peas and lentils, and I should have paid more attention because who knew where I would end up, where there's lots of peas and lentils in Saskatchewan as well. I started working for SCIC in 2010 in the Mooseman office. I was out in the field as an adjuster and in the office as a customer service representative. And then I started working with research and development in 2013. And I love working with the producers and the industry groups, learning about new things that are happening in agriculture. That's really what our role is here, is to talk with industry and producers to see where our insurance maybe has some gaps or what's not working for you, and to see if we can make any adjustments or changes there. Last year, with retirement of a colleague, I took on new crops programs and specialty crops. So I've got a lot on my plate, but it's been really interesting learning about all of these different pieces. And I'll go through the crop insurance pieces first, and then I'll let Ray introduce himself when he talks briefly about agri-stability. So just real quickly here, crop insurance, SCIC isn't just crop insurance. We do administer the agri-stability program here in Saskatchewan. We have the livestock price insurance program, and we also have a wildlife program there too that covers for damage in crops and for livestock as well. So I'll get right into the pedigreed seed portion. To be in the pedigreed seed option for our insurance program, you do need to be a member of the Canadian Seed Growers Association. This option does recognize the unique value and higher costs that are associated with pedigreed seed production. So we provide a higher price option for the insurable crops. And there's also a quality adjustment if the germination of the seed produced is below a certified seed standard due to insurable causes of loss. So there is individual coverage, and the yield losses are calculated and updated separately for pedigreed and commercial crops. So if you grow both, they're calculated separately, they're not together. And if you do grow both, we need to have that harvested and stored separately as well in order to capture that data properly. So as I've said, we have been working with SCIC for quite a while. I've just joined in here in the last couple of years, working with the pedigreed option a little bit and with SCIC. So in the past, before I became involved, we did review higher generation seed for insurance. We did a lot of research on that, and our analysts in the insurance area did quite a bit of work as well. But there just didn't seem to be the interest at that time for what we needed to be able to go forward with the program. So we adjourned that. Our latest issue that we're looking at that was brought to me last year was to review germination losses during storage. So we don't cover for losses due to storage. So this is a difficult one for us to look at, trying to identify any methods that attribute losses to growing and harvest conditions. So just a little bit, I just barely got to scratch the surface on this last fall, so I'm hoping to get back into that here soon. I did talk with a seed lab that does a germ and a vigor test, and they recommend that difference should be less than 10. So the problem with that is there's only one seed lab that I'm aware of at the moment that does that sort of a test, and the vigor test isn't standardized among all labs. So for us to use that as a standard for insurance and such, or to determine those losses, would be really difficult yet at this time until that test is actually standardized between all labs. I did also talk to the Canadian Malt Barley Technical Center, and they use a process called rapid visco analysis, or RVA, and that determines susceptibility to germination, which of course in malt barley is quite important. So this determines or provides a pre-germination activity, and anything less than 100 holds or greater than 100, sorry, anything on RVA greater than 100 holds the germination. 2019, there were some very low RVA tests. 2014, 15, and 16 were also bad years for that, similar to a falling number in wheat. So there is some work there that we can look at as far as barley goes. So those are the only two things like I said, I just barely scratched the surface, and so far it looks like it'll be very crop specific to see what there are for any tests or ways to determine what that loss was attributed to. So we are going to continue looking at this, of course. With germination, as you're all aware, there's temperature issues, in storage that sometimes affect that germination also. There's differences between crops. There's be some sample testing we'd have to look at. So we do want to continue to look into this to see if there's anything we can attribute to the growing conditions or harvest conditions that might affect that germination in storage. So if anyone knows of any research or has any information out there on any research being done on this, for sure, let me know about that. So just a few little pieces here. Why should you insure for your pedigreed seed? Well, this is just an average comparison as far as average coverage. So you'll see on hard red spring wheat here on the first column, the light green is the pedigreed coverage and the dark green is the commercial coverage. So you'll see on these crops I have listed here that there is a higher average coverage in comparison to the commercial crops. And that's due a lot to that higher price that we insure you for as well. So these slides, these pictures are all on our external website as well. And there's examples there to walk you through some of this. So in the claim, basically we look at what your harvested production is, and if it's below what we guarantee you for then we can register a claim. Staff will, at the moment, we're not measuring bins as much anyway, but we'll use information to determine what your final net yield is, and then what the difference between your crop insurance guarantee and your final net yield, and we multiply that times your price option for the crop gives you what your claim is. On a pedigreed claim, it's the same thing. It's just that we separate those separately from commercial and pedigreed. They must be, like I said before, harvested and stored separately. So this is just a bit of a graphic here showing, the yield, the quality, and then we take both of those into consideration to determine what your claim is there. So quality factors, that's what determines and can reduce that amount of your total production. If you have a low quality, it'll bring that amount of production down to give you a payment on more bushels per acre. So basically, those quality factors are determined during harvest. So we have to wait until a majority of harvest is completed and wait until there's actual production being sold to show what those market prices are out there. So if there's, not a lot of movement in the market, we're not going to have a quality factor yet for that crop or for that grade. This again is just a bit of a graphic and an explanation of how that calculation works. This is out on our website, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this unless there are some questions there. What I really want to get to is how this looks on a comparing to a commercial to a pedigreed claim. So the quality factors, as I said, they do change yearly because they're based on actual prices. And then those production amounts are reduced by the quality factor. The guarantee less production equals your shortfall, and then your shortfall is paid based on the price selected. And of course, the pedigreed has a higher insured price, so that's what you would be paid for your lost production. So using that example, if we used the prices for commercial versus pedigreed on barley, if we had a loss of 1,250 bushels, the commercial crop would get a payment of $6,125, where the pedigreed crop would use that higher price and you would get a payment of $79,6250. So there's a difference of $1,800 there on 1,250 bushels. So that's just a quick example there. And of course, that depends on the insured price for each year and what your actual loss is there. And then of course, if there's quality involved, then that would be reduced further. So I just want to talk a little bit about the failed germination quality factor. This is a little bit confusing sometimes. So what we do is we use a price factor based off of commercial to determine what the pedigreed price is. And what that difference between the commercial and the pedigreed is what we use to start for a quality factor for failed germination. So in this example, it is also on our website. It would be if the price difference is 1.2 between hard red commercial and pedigreed. And so then we would take that 1.0 divided by 1.2 if that's what the commercial factor is for feed wheat, which this last year, the feed wheat was there was good prices for that. So that would be fair to say. So you would get a quality factor of 0.83, and then that factor is applied to your net production to calculate your actual claim. Also, I'll just talk real quickly about wildlife damage. This is available to all Saskatchewan producers. You don't have to be in crop insurance for this. Compensation prices are determined using a price survey. So we use an external survey to give us those prices, determined by comparing an undamaged area for yield loss to an area that is damaged. You're eligible for up to 100% compensation on loss of acres that are out over winter. I don't think we had a lot of that this past year, but in some years we've had that. And there is also predation for livestock as well. And we do cover for cleaning excreta contaminated grain as well. So there's some, and that's available, like I said, for all producers. It's not just, you don't have to be in crop insurance for that. So just a quick couple of slides here on what we did for 2021. Just a few things. We had some program enhancements. We had some increased coverage for native forage, increased that establishment benefit up to $200 per acre for those producers. We added tame hay acres that can be insured now under the Forage Rainfall Insurance Program. And we implemented a large-scale commercial vegetable pilot program. So now we have standalone coverage for cabbage and pumpkins. There's actually hopefully some good growth that will happen in that vegetable area in the province with the increased irrigation enhancements there. And we also updated the large Kabuli chickpeas base grade to reflect current production and marketing patterns. So this change did increase the insured price and the quality coverage for Kabuli chickpeas. So I'll just talk a little bit more here on how we establish what that base price is. So what your insured price is for your crop. So we get those prices, they're established using January price forecasts at the end of January, and those are provided by a market analysis group at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. So it's a very tight deadline window for us getting those prices at the end of January so we can get things into our systems and program for February and get sales packages out to everybody. So it's a forecast of what the actual harvested crop is going to be for that year. So it's not, I know sometimes it's difficult to see those prices come out and knowing what the current market is right now, but it's a forecast of what is the harvested crop for this current year actually going to be worth. So with that, then we take the commercial price times a price factor to give us what the pedigreed prices are. So I've just got a slide here showing, what those price factors are for those crops. They do differ by crop, and we do review them periodically. They are probably due for a review again. The challenge there is finding a good source for pedigreed prices. So if anybody has suggestions there, we're open for information there. We have to work quite closely with you to get those values to update that. So with program changes, Lori had told me there's been some questions about how do we get changes. So the first step, of course, is working with you to know where the gaps are, to know what kind of risk if you have additional needs for risk management or what you're experiencing out there, if there's changes in the industry that have changed the risks. We have to propose those changes then to Agriculture Food Canada for approvals. And we also need budget approval from the province. And then with that, then it also has to be actuarially sound for the insurance principles. So there's a lot of pieces that go into that. It's not just as simple as, okay, we're going to make this change, click, it's done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on that to make sure that everything's in place, that it's a sound program, and that it is actually going to help you or make a difference for producers to help them balance their risk. And Agriculture and Food Canada has, quite a few different guidelines that we have to fit into. And one of those, of course, is not risk splitting, basically not insuring things separately that really have the same market or the same price area or the same product. So that's what I have for crop insurance and for the pedigreed side of things. I'll let Ray go ahead and take this away on agri-stability, and then we'll have some questions afterwards.
Excellent. Thanks, Janelle. And thanks everyone for providing the opportunity, and the seed growers for giving us the opportunity to take a few minutes and talk to you this morning about our crop insurance program and our agri-stability program. My name's Ray Greneveld. I am a manager here with agri-stability at Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation. I've been with SCIC for just over 11 years now, and with the agri-stability program for about 3 years now. And so wanted to take this opportunity just to review a couple of things about the program. As Janelle mentioned, agri-stability is one of the risk management tools that SCIC delivers. And we like to talk about our tools as a suite that producers want to look at in combination together, and do they work together, or is one enough for your farm? So want to make sure that that you understand the different options that are out there for you and the consideration that you might be able to give to your farm. So what is agri-stability? Well, it's protection for the whole farm operation. Agri-stability is a whole farm approach. It looks at all the different lines of production that you have on your farm and develops a margin. And margins are what we use within the farm. That margin takes in all the income and expenses related to those production practices. And that's how we look at your farming operation. What we do is we provide financial support when that farm experiences a large financial decline relative to the historical performance of the whole farm operation. And so what that ultimately means is your coverage is really personalized for your farming operation. Everything about your coverage relates to the financial performance on your farm. What happens to your neighbor's operation or what happens elsewhere in the province doesn't impact the coverage and the opportunity for benefits out of the program. It's really personalized and individualized for your operations. So one of the things we often hear out there is that there's declining participation in agri-stability. And while that is true in terms of the overall number of farms enrolled in agri-stability, what I want to show you here is that we've kind of hit a consistent level in terms of the participation of the actual farms in our program and what they represent. As you guys all know, we've seen a lot of farm consolidation, farms getting larger, mergers happening, that sort of thing. And we see that reflected in our program. We see that reflected in the crop insurance program. So this graph here is really just to signify that, on the right-hand side, you see total Saskatchewan farm cash receipts. They're in roughly that $14 billion range, depending on what happens during the year. Our agri-stability program on the left-hand side, you can see while our number of participants has declined, the actual value of the farms that are in our program has remained relatively consistent, over the last 5 years here. So we're at roughly in that $7 billion range for the actual value of the farms that are in our program, and that's remained consistent over the years. It just depends on, how the year unfolds, where that income goes up or down. But it's just to signify that the comments out there, participation is declining, but we are keeping, a significant amount of farms in the program. The other comment that we often hear out there is that, agri-stability doesn't pay out. Never hear about anyone getting benefits out of the program. So just wanted to put this up here. This gives you an idea of the benefits that have been paid to Saskatchewan producers through agri-stability over the last 6 years. And when you look at that, that's over $470 million that has been issued. And each year is responding to different factors. 2014 was a really wet year. Fusarium was a big concern. So as a result, we were paying out on a lot of the quality losses that happened to producers as a result of Fusarium. 2015, a good year in the province, so our payouts weren't very, very high in 15. 2016, you look at that year and half of the dollars that were paid in 2016, around, $43 million actually went to the cattle industry as there was a significant drop in the market that year for cattle producers. And so it responded that way. 17 was really about some of the dry conditions and market declines in some of the crops. 2018 was really the combination of a lot of different factors going on. We had dry conditions combined with price drops for some significant commodities and lentils and durum. And so the combination of those two things really shot up payments in the agri-stability program. That's been our biggest year since 2012, over $138 million delivered. 2019, we are about 80% way through processing our 2019 files. And so we're roughly in the $65 million paid out. A good chunk of that related to a crop that got left out over winter, or really that rough fall that we had in 2019 as a result. But there was also some price decline issues. You'll recall, of course, the China canola issue was big, and we were responding to that market drop that happened with canola and a few of the other crops. So this just gives you a sense that the program does respond when those situations happen out there for producers. So for pedigreed seed growers, again, this is for Saskatchewan only. Looking at our information, we have over 140 farms in the program that report income from pedigreed seed sales. So these farms may have other types of production as well. As you well know, you all have different types of production on your farms, but we have 140 farms that are reporting those sales. The average reference margin for those farms, $674,000. So that's kind of that coverage level that gets set for the farms in the program. And in 2019, of those 140 farms, we've issued about 1.7 million in payments as a result of those farms and what they experienced in the 2019 year. So enrollment in AgriStability, we are coming up to the deadline to enroll. If you're not in the program, April 30th, 2021 is the deadline to enroll in AgriStability. And really it's as simple as a phone call. As long as you give us a shout by that April 30th date and let us know, I'm interested, would like to participate, or even just learn more. As long as that conversation started, we will consider you having met the deadline, and we can continue to work with you after April 30th. But we just need that contact initiated to say, yes, I'm interested and would like some more info. And then we can work with you, and that would qualify you as having met the deadline. The other thing, enrollment in AgriStability is really affordable. It's $3.15 for every $1,000 of reference margin covered. So when you look at that average margin that I had there for pedigreed seed growers, $674,000, your fee is going to be roughly $2,100 as a result of that. So $2,100 where your coverage level is set at $674, and payments out of the program, average payment in 2019 I think was around $174,000 for pedigreed seed growers. So it takes a long time for your fee to actually make up the benefit that you can get out of the program. We also just want to mention, crop insurance and AgriStability really do work well together. Crop insurance, as Janelle's talked about, is covering that production risk. AgriStability is about covering all those other uncontrollable factors: rising input costs, changes in the value of your inventory, falling commodity prices. All those things are taken into account when we look at the margins on your farm. And so it's really about including all that and building it into a coverage that is whole farm, but offsetting and complementing what crop insurance can provide. So just want to mention one other thing here, that it was new for AgriStability in 2020, but is continuing on forward. And that is that indemnities from producer paid risk management programs now considered non-allowable income for AgriStability. And really what that means is if you're purchasing additional coverage from things like private hail insurance, global ag risk solutions, just solutions, livestock price insurance, any of those things, if you receive an indemnity from that, we're not going to include it in your benefit calculation as income. And what that does is it's not penalizing you being in AgriStability for having purchased some additional risk management coverage for your farm. So it's a really good option. It actually bumps up your coverage by if you're selecting these other risk management tools. And the expenses, though, are still allowable. We still allow that. So any premiums you pay for that coverage is going to be an allowable expense for AgriStability. And then we put it back in your reference years. And that was done because we don't want those reference years to fluctuate and really reduce your coverage if that's coming out. So we put that income back in your reference years. It actually bolsters up your margin and keeps that margin at a consistent level. So here's just a quick example of how that plays out. In 2019, you'll see in the example there, this producer had $500,000 of allowable income as a result of sales, crop insurance, and a hail insurance indemnity. What happens now is that hail insurance indemnity comes out of your allowable income. So in this scenario, it changed that allowable income by $50,000, and as a result, that moved that producer closer to a benefit depending on whatever else was going on in that farming operation. So you're not penalized any longer for accessing that additional risk management coverage. And there's our contact information. Again, if you have questions, want to initiate that conversation about enrollment, there's our AgriStability call center number. And of course, we have 21 offices across the province. You can definitely contact any of those offices, and they're more than willing to help you out as well.
Thanks, Ray. I'll just quickly mention as well that the deadline for crop insurance for any changes to your contract is coming up here next week on March 31st. So if you want to make any changes or if you need to apply for a contract, that deadline is coming up next week.
Thanks so much, Janelle and Ray. We really appreciate the open dialogue that we have between our group and your group. We've always felt very comfortable going to you with issues, and we really appreciate that you're looking into some of the things that are impacting our members. So we appreciate that. And thank you very much for the presentation. We have a couple questions, so I'll let Jennifer and Kelly handle those.
Sorry, Kelly here from Alberta. I apologize, I was on mute. I've got a question from Kathy Fedor. Can you insure individual fields, or does all production of that crop kind get pooled?
Right, so that's kind of what I was talking about when we looked at higher generation seed. So if it is all the same crop, it is all insured together. We don't insure separate fields or separate varieties. That by federal regulations is considered risk splitting, but it is something that we're aware of, that is an issue for pedigreed seed growers. So we're willing to, have a conversation about that again if needed.
Great question, Kathy, and reply. Thank you. Being the Manitoba voice here on this panel, this is super interesting to see how the structure is in the Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation. I have a question here from Mike Shuchuk. Crop pricing structure definitely needs review. Fall pricing on commercial CWRS is much higher than your pedigreed price is at. I realize this can be difficult in such a volatile market, but probably $1.50 per bushel correction can be made at this point. So that's not really a question, it's a comment, but I don't know whether you wanted to address that.
I'm guessing maybe they're addressing like maybe some wildlife prices that come out at that point in time. I'm not exactly sure what he's getting at for sure there. But we do try to review our prices and get as much of a wide survey as possible. So just remember too that it is a Saskatchewan wide survey that we look at. So there are differences across the province and different markets sometimes and different prices, but we try to get what the best average is for the majority on some of those things.
All right, Kelly here from Alberta again agreed. It is interesting to see how the insurance varies from province to province. Got a question from Lyndon Stoll for SCIC. With intercropping use increasing rapidly and even some pedigreed seed being grown as an intercrop, is SCIC going to make it easier to get coverage for intercrops over the whole farm instead of the current percentage of total monocrop model?
So sure, I can address that. So others in my group are working with intercropping quite closely and working with industry and groups to see what we can do with that. So what he's referring to there as the percent of total monocrop model is currently intercropping is insured under a grains diversification program. So you can insure a maximum of 30% of your total multi-peril crops that you have as grains diversification. And so we do recognize that people that are very advanced and going into intercropping are growing more than that, or doing their entire farm sometimes with intercropping. It is a very new it's a good practice that's been recognized and has been being done for quite a while. So I would watch and see there is some work being done on that to see what we can do with that and how we can ensure that differently to give a better insurance product for that practice. We do have to, we've been collecting data, and that's where we collect it is from that grains diversification program. So that's why we, put that there a few years ago to try and gather some more information on crop mixes and different things like that. So.
Thanks, Janelle. I don't see any additional questions at this point in time. Just to encourage everyone that if you've got a question, answer it now. I believe Lori would indicate that there'll be a recording of your presentations, which will provide anyone with Janelle and Ray's contact information if they've got further questions.
Yes, that's true. Thanks again, Janelle and Ray, for your presentation. And we have one, Todd Hyra, you wanted to make a clarification on something that was discussed earlier. So I'm going to unmute you and let you speak. Are you?
I am there. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
Awesome, thank you very much. So just a quick comment. Thanks to everybody for the presentations. Just with regard to, Jason made a comment about the PBR settlement that was announced a month ago. And in that particular settlement, the cleaner was not responsible for any of the damages in that particular settlement. But Jason is correct, under PBR 91 going forward, the buyer, the seller, the cleaner can all be held liable. So the need for the waiver is certainly correct. But in that particular case, the cleaner was not held responsible for any of those damages. Just wanted to clarify that.
Todd, it's Kelly here. Just for clarification, is that because the statute at the time was under PBR 78?
The varieties at the time, yes, were PBR 78.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Thanks both for that clarification. There's a lot of complexity involved when these sort of issues come up, and it's nice to have people we can go to that can give some guidance on how those get handled and how to limit risk. So seeing no further questions, really again like to thank our sponsor, Westland Insurance Group, for their sponsorship of today's presentation. And and thank you so much to the speakers, Lauren and Ray and Janelle. And again, special thanks to Westland for presenting the Seed Talk series. We also like to thank our other sponsors that sponsor our year-round activities: Bayer Seed Growth, Discovery Seed Labs, Westland Insurance Group, CCAN, Syngenta, FP Genetics, Lewis M. Carter Manufacturing, SGS Canada, Next Seed, Crop Life, and Canterra Seeds. And we thank you again very much for your support. Thank you to everyone today for participating in our Seed Talk series. So this is the final one for the year, and we really appreciate your participation today. We had a great discussion, I think, for both of the presentations, and so it's nice to have some of that interaction and people have their opportunity to ask their questions. This again was a joint presentation by Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta seed growers. Our contact information is on the screen right now. As has already been mentioned, this will be recorded and uploaded to our website. And if you've got any feedback that you want to send, please feel free. Again, thank you so much for joining us today.